Hey everybody, Alex Kazora, SteelersDepot.com, back for another video giving my reaction and recap of Day 3 of the 2020 NFL Draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Made 4 selections today, no tradeouts, no movement, just their 4 planned and intended picks. So let's jump into it. 124 with Anthony McFarland, the running back from Maryland. And this one was probably the most questionable one I had of the day in terms of the player that they took for a variety of reasons. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to be fair to McFarland and to the player and not judge it based on other positions or the fit or that sense of it, but just the player himself to begin with. And is he a talented guy that could make an NFL roster and compete and be a contributor? And there certainly is talent there. He's a big play guy. He runs 4.44 at the combine. He certainly plays to that speed on tape. He's a playmaker, a dynamic guy. I remember really first watching McFarland last year when I watched Irvin Gray, who they drafted in the 7th round out of Maryland. And that Maryland team was pretty bad, underwhelming. The offense kind of stunk, but McFarland was that one dude that kept popping up. I looked this guy up and say, who is this guy making all these plays? Now he battled an ankle injury, I think in week 2. This past season, his junior year, he left a year early, and he had to battle through that the entire year. It hindered him, missed the game because of it. His production waned, and he got in a rotation with, I think, the other guy, Leak, who's, I think, with Seattle now. And so he wasn't really the guy anymore, and the numbers, dropped because of it. But there is some toughness there. He's a smaller guy, but he's not, he's a shorter guy, I should say, but he's not necessarily a smaller guy. He's a more compact frame. He's a lot smaller than the typical Steelers back they draft, but in that sense, it's a good thing because personally, I was getting kind of tired of them drafting the same old 225-pound plotter, good power, good leg drive. We'll get you 3 on 3rd and 3. We'll get you 3 on 3rd and 7. That kind of guy. I mean, there's value in that, of course, but I wanted a different element in the backfield. That's why Kerrith White Jr. was just such a refreshing guy to see last year because he provided some splash, some explosiveness, and just a different type of back. And McFarland certainly is more akin to that mold. And Eddie Faulkner, the running backs coach, said as much when they drafted him. So it's a different element in the backfield, which is nice to have based on Jalen Samuels and James Conner and Benny Snell, all the guys they've had before, Trey Edmonds and the like. Now I wish McFarland was a little more versatile in terms of his production. Only 24 career receptions at Maryland. They were a pretty run-heavy team, but doesn't have a lot of work out of the backfield. I think he potentially could get some value and some work there. I wish he had more value in the return game for a guy of his kind of profile. He's got like 1 kick return and no punt returns in his career, so probably not going to do that in the NFL. Maybe they give him a look there. There would be some intrigue in doing so, but he doesn't really have the experience on his resume right now. If he didn't do it in college, probably not going to do it in the NFL, although, to be fair, he was a starting running back in his first year, so, maybe they didn't want to put him in the return game. He gets hurt last year, plays with the injury. They didn't want to give him extra work there. So we'll see in terms of the return game. Hopefully he could do something there and add a little bit of extra value. There were some reports, and there's multiple. It's not coming from just one source, about off-the-field concerns and butting heads with coaches. I've seen conflicting stuff. Some people say that he's just a really competitive, passionate guy, and that's all it is. Some people say it's more sinister than that. I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, the Steelers feel comfortable enough to the degree of either that it isn't an issue or that they can deal with it. They have the locker room to deal with it, and of course, there are plenty of Steelers connections there, whether you're talking Matt Canada, who coached him in 2018, Mike Tomlin's son is on the Maryland football program, although apparently McFarland said he never talked to Dino Tomlin before. Scotty Montgomery, the old Steelers receiver coach, I believe is the OC there now with the Terrapins. So there are a lot of connections there to make this team feel, I guess, more comfortable, at least their evaluation of his character, whatever that evaluation may be. Now, in terms of the fit and the use, it is a little murky. Are you going to get time behind Conner? Still going to be your guy whenever he's healthy. Benny Snell, I think, is going to take a big step forward his sophomore year. The fact he's a different blend of guy certainly, I think, helps, but there is questions about the exact fit of Anthony McFarland. My thought process for running back coming into this thing was preferably not to take one early at all, but if you're going to take one early. They had an opportunity to do so with J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers in the 2nd round, passed on it, and so now you're kind of in the mid-rounds, and it's where does he fit in the pecking order? Will he get snaps? And probably you're going to invest in the position pretty heavily next year, assuming James Conner's not re-signed, and unless something drastic happens with Snell or McFarland this year. So just trying to figure out the exact fit nature. Obviously, he's not a feature back himself. He's always going to be a complement, and that seems to be what Colbert had said. If they were going to draft a running back, it would be a complement to James Conner. McFarland, in that sense, does complement him well, but it's just trying to find the exact role, and then especially when you compare that to what I think they should have done. And I try not to put a lot of focus on this because it is a lot of crying over spilt milk. But you had a guy like Rashad Lawrence, a nose tackle from LSU there. Kayvon Wallace, a safety from Clemson, was there. And I just thought those were more immediate needs and arguably as good or even better players. I think that would have been a better way to look at it. Maybe you could still go running back with an athletic kind of guy late in the draft in the 6th, 7th round as opposed to going safety and nose tackle. But I just saw those as much more immediate needs that could have been and should have been addressed a lot earlier, and now you're counting on some guys we'll touch on in a second that are going to have to battle just to make the roster first, let alone try to actually carve out any sort of significant role when it comes to play time. So that's the part where I'm very conflicted on. I'd rather have gone a different direction. I do like the fact that at least they went with a different type of running back, someone that can bring some big plays to this rushing attack. Over the last 3 years, they only have 25 runs of 20-plus yards. That's 30th in the NFL. They just don't get enough big plays in the run game. The offense obviously really suffered last year because of it, with not having Ben and no one else really stepping up to be that big playmaker, especially on the ground game. So I understand that aspect, but I personally would have gone in a different direction other than running back at pick 124. At pick 135, there was one I really like, maybe my favorite pick of the entire draft, potentially. Kevin Dotson, the guard from Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajun, last Raging Cajun this team drafted was Ike Taylor back in the early 2000s, and Dotson just feels like a Steeler through and through. He's got the mentality. He was a Steeler fan growing up, apparently. There's just a lot of cool connections there, but this dude is a mauling run blocker, arguably one of the best, probably top 3 run blocking interior linemen in this class. That is what he's known for, and he was an AP, first team AP All-American as a senior, which the first Raging Cajun to ever be named to AP All-American first team, which is really cool, and he certainly deserved it. This guy will get after it in the run game. He's a people mover. He's got great upper body strength, great leg drive and finish, and just that nastiness in the run game you want. There isn't a whole lot of versatility there. He's basically a guard only. He said he has trained some at center. Probably not going to play center in all honesty, but this is a guy that kind of has that just going to help the run game. He may not start right away. They're kind of framing this as compete and come in to start, and that's fine, all well and good to promote competition. Probably won't be the starter out of the gate, but in the theory, the idea of the mandate from Art Rooney to fix the run game, Dotson in that sense will help there. So he can't get over aggressive, and his pass sets he can get too aggressive, and he's not the best laterally, and there's just some overall athletic profile things to be concerned about. And he was a non-combine invite, probably one of the biggest snubs from the combine, and so you don't have testing on him in that sense. Maybe he did a private workout, they have a video on that, but nothing that we know. But it was interesting. Kevin Dotson was the first non-combine invite drafted by any team in the NFL. It was Pittsburgh, which would have been the last team I would have guessed to do that. They really lean on the combine, and it's the highest non-combine selection by Pittsburgh in the Mike Tomlin tenure since 2007. So that one's kind of crazy too. So yeah, Kevin Dotson, the pick there, a really good run blocker, nasty. I think the fans are going to love him. His attitude, his just play style, and while he probably won't start right away, I do like this value pick, and he's a guy that I think has starting potential maybe even sooner rather than later. Maybe by this time next year, we're talking about Dotson really competing for a job, knowing that guys like Filer, Banner, Villanueva entering the last year of their deals. Obviously, he's not going to play tackle. He's going to be a guard, but if Filer leaves or if Filer has to shift back out to right tackle, whatever the case is, I think Dotson could be ready by 2021. After a long wait until the 6th round, Steelers were back on the clock at 198. They took safety Antwon Brooks Jr. from Maryland, so another Maryland player. This was the Matt Canada show on day 3. Safety was a big need, a position I think they had to address. Again, I wish they would have addressed it sooner. Again, I may have gone in a different direction in terms of who I would have taken. I would have sided more with a Geno Stone from Iowa or Josh Metellus from Michigan, but that doesn't matter. With Brooks himself, he's a bit of a hybrid guy. Terrell Austin even kind of, didn't say they were going to move him around as a hybrid guy. They wanted to give him in one spot at first, but certainly he could profile as some sort of hybrid linebacker, sub-package player, dime, big nickel, something like that. What I've seen from him so far, and I'm still going through some of my work on him, is that he's a big dude in terms of his overall, just thickly built at 5'10", 220, that's physical, loves to hit, high energy, a good tackler overall, wants to throw his weight around, wants to get involved in the play, emotional, in a good way, wears his heart on his sleeve, and just a really physical downhill player through and through. He can play in the slot, he can play in the box, a little bit as a post safety, but the better off will be is by playing as close to the line of scrimmage as possible in in the NFL. Good productivity overall. He's actually got some ball skills. He had a great interception against Texas in 2018 to finish off that game. He tracked it, made a leaping catch along the left sideline. So there was a little ball skills there, but overall he's going to make an impact as a blitzer, working downhill, filling the alley, being a strong tackler in the open field. He's got to raise his aiming point as a tackler a little bit in the open field. He will shoot a little low sometimes, and that will cause him to miss more than you like. But the issue with him is just overall athleticism, some hip stiffness, man coverage. Devin Duvernay in that Texas game I just referenced beat him for a long touchdown. In that one, you want him in zone coverage as a zone underneath hook robber defender, as opposed to playing in man coverage on a slot receiver, or, an outside receiver, for example. But he's someone that can hopefully match up decently well against tight ends. And I think just an overall theme for this class has been really good special teams players. And this team lost a lot of quality and core special teams guys. Tyler Medikevich, Rosie Nix, even Anthony Chicklo was a core special teams guy. Obviously, defensively, he offered very little, but he was a really good special teams player and certainly played all four phases on there. Yes, you did sign Derek Watt, and that's going to help replace, Medikevich and or Rosie Nix, but you want to add more to that. So when you do things like, even drafting Trace Claypool, who's going to make work as a gunner to replace Johnny Holton, for example, another good special teams guy that you lost, so you can replace that. Antwon Brooks is going to be able to help out as well, so I think that's what you're kind of getting with some of those guys. Alex Highsmith, you drafted in the third round, can also help on special teams right away, so the upside isn't terribly high. I think at best he's going to be a sub-package player at the NFL level. He's not going to be a full-time starter at safety, maybe inside linebacker if he made a full kind of convert, potentially. But I think he's going to offer really rock-solid value on special teams and give some versatility and just kind of a physical tone setter you want on that third phase of the game. And finally, at 232 overall in the 7th round for the Pittsburgh Steelers' last pick of 2020, they get around to addressing nose tackle. How about that? The one position where you had a need, where you needed a bona fide starter on defense, or really any position. You finally take one in the 7th round. They go with Carlos Davis, the defensive tackle / nose tackle from Nebraska. His twin brother, Khalil Davis, was drafted around earlier. I believe he went to either Tampa Bay or Miami, one of those two places. I want to say Tampa Bay. But with Carlos, a good athlete, tested well like his brother, ran a 4.82 at the combine. I think that was basically the only thing he did test-wise. He did bench 27 reps on the bar. So he's got some functional strength. He's a nose tackle. He played mostly interior in their Nebraska's often base 3-4 defense. Inconsistent, very hot and cold. As a pass rusher, not going to offer a whole lot, which is okay. I can live with that in the 7th round. Just kind of get me more of a plugger. A little bit of quickness, some decent hand fight and hand use and use on stunts, and that's important in Pittsburgh, so that's not going to be completely foreign to him. In the run game, where obviously things are more important, it's all about pad level. When his pad level is good and he plays with good leverage and strike, he can actually hold the point of attack. He flows decently down the line against zone schemes. Watched him against Tyler Baidesh this past year, 2018, I should say, and actually did well flowing laterally, but when his pad level's high, when his pads pop up, when he's not playing with good hand use and technique and leverage, the dude gets washed off the ball, like a lot of guys, obviously, that don't play with good pad leverage. So just very inconsistent player overall. One snap he can look great and leverage and get under the centers and be able to upright them and hold the point of attack and shed. But there are times where he's losing that battle and he's getting washed 5 yards off the ball and put on his butt. So very up and down player. Clearly not someone ready to start day one or really make any sort of significant impact as a rookie. He's got a lot of technique stuff to work on, unfortunately. So what is this team going to do at nose tackle? I go into the draft asking myself that question. I'm leaving the draft asking myself that question. Is it going to be Wormley, Big Dan, Alu? I mean, there's just no clarity there, and it's very frustrating because that was the one spot where you really could have, you had a need. You had the one position where you really felt like you didn't have a starter ready if the season began today. So I get they're in sub-package a lot. No one knows that more than me. I'm the one that tracks the numbers and looks at all this data, and I'm probably the reason why you know exactly how much they're in sub versus their base, quote-unquote, 3-4 defense. But still, that's 30% of the snaps. It's 300 snaps a season. You want to have good run defense. You're playing in the AFC North, a lot of good rushing attacks. December football, you better be able to stop the run, and that is a worry. It's going to be such a massive downgrade from Javon Hargrave. Anybody, it's going to be a downgrade, but now you're just taking a big step backwards. So that's a huge concern, and I wish they would have addressed that earlier. Again, 6 picks, not a lot of draft capital, get that, but certainly chances to do that earlier than the last pick in the 7th round. So Davis may not make the team. McCullough is obviously going to make the team. Will he start or not? We'll have to see what their plan is. But there's a little intrigue there, but Carlos Davis has a lot of work to do. So to recap the draft as a whole, it was fine. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think that the AFC North as a whole did an awesome job drafting. I think Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland all had excellent drafts and really good draft classes. Now Pittsburgh, of course, can say, well, they used some draft capital this year to get Devin Bush last year, and to Minka Fitzpatrick, obviously, and they're kind of getting a quasi, chestnut checkers. Ben Roethlisberger was a draft pick, getting him back because obviously they didn't have him last year. So there are a lot of additions coming back in that sense. But the AFC North had a heck of a draft. I think the Steelers had an okay draft, nothing great, nothing terrible. It was functional. Special teams help at the top with Claypool and Highsmith, and McFarland's interesting. He can produce some big plays as a rookie right away. There's no question about that. Dotson, I think I really like that pick. I think there's long-term potential starting value in him, starting probably more next year than this year. I think Brooks is going to be able to at least carve out a really good role on special teams, and then Davis is maybe a stash player for a year with some technique and coaching by Carl Dunbar, a great coach, can maybe make him into something at least, but it wasn't the perfect draft. It rarely is, obviously. Again, I question and disagree with the assessment of waiting so long at safety at nose tackle. I think that was the wrong move for the team to make. Running back, I'm not thrilled about that. If you're going to do it at the top or don't do it at all. This middle ground, I'm not in love with. But overall, I see the allure. I think you get some guys that can help you right away with Claypool and Highsmith, and there are also some intriguing longer-term options as well that have certainly a potential to start make a bigger impact even later down the line. So let me know your thoughts on this draft class. Also, the undrafted class, by the way, was generally underwhelming. A couple of interesting names. There's the Bandy kid from Miami, Florida, nickel corner. Looks like he declared a year early, but I think all those guys that watched Miami were really excited about him. You got Taylor from Kentucky, who was like 6'9", 310, 8.5 sacks last year for the Wildcats. He might be an offensive tackle convert. I'm not sure. Maybe he sticks at defensive line because he did have 8.5 sacks last year, but that size kind of feels like a Villanueva, Brian Mahalik, Sharon Jones, who they signed from the XFL, was a big D tackle that converted offensive lineman in Seattle, and now is with Pittsburgh. So we'll see on that. And then Josiah Coatney from Ole Miss, which I liked a lot better than Benito Jones, the other defensive lineman from Ole Miss. And I think he's got potentially a home to maybe even crack the roster. I want to dig into his tape some more, but I did kind of like the profile and some of the things I had read on Josiah Coatney. So that was the undrafted class, but pretty uninspiring. Pittsburgh, they don't offer fully or at least partially guaranteed base salaries for undrafted free agents like what most teams do. They just offer the signing bonus, which is capped at like $115,000 for your whole class. So they just can't compete financially with some of the approach that other teams take, and they have really poor and average and underwhelming undrafted classes to show for it, unfortunately. And this year really is just kind of another example of that. But overall, I like the class. I'm not going to put a grade on it today. I want to read more on these guys, and the grades are arbitrary and kind of silly, I guess, anyway. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this draft class, your favorite pick, your least favorite pick, who you might have taken instead. Any thoughts you have, to leave them in the comments below. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll have a lot of content coming up, and we'll talk to you soon.